what is the most common challenge that people have when they hand over their financial information to you?
I'd say there's a couple of things, Blandon, that people are generally sort of worried about.
Wealth HQ, empowering you to take charge of your financial life.
Financial freedom.
Jason Lai is back with us. He worked in real estate for 6 years and for the last 16 months has been a mortgage advisor. He had experience working in Sydney before coming to Auckland. He's also worked in commercial property and alongside real estate developers. So he's got a well-rounded background on advising people about getting into property and investors wanting to refinance. Jason's here to give you reassurance if you're stressed about approaching an advisor for help. Jason, what is the most common challenge that people have when they hand over their financial information to you?
I'd say there's a couple of things, Blandon, that people are generally sort of worried about. I think the first thing that sort of springs to mind is perhaps sometimes people think they have to have everything in perfect order before they even have a chat, when in reality, perfect finances are, few and far between. I'd say maybe literally, 1 in 100 will probably have perfect finances, because the reality is everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. So I'd say, just come have a chat. It doesn't matter if you're ready right now or if you're not going to be ready for another 12 months or even longer. It all starts with a conversation, really.
So you prefer to talk to someone early rather than when they have absolutely everything in order?
I mean, we see like literally everything. I mean, we've had clients that have literally come to us under contract with, 4 days left for due diligence, and they're like, hey, Jason and team, Mortgage HQ, can you get a turnaround within the next 4 days? And the reality is we do have situations like that, which can be quite frantic and stressful, but then equally we have conversations that we may, start engaging with the client and they don't end up doing anything related to finance for maybe 24 plus or in some cases even 36 plus months away. So everything in between.
Far out. So in a typical week, how many clients do an advisor work with?
I think it varies quite substantially, and that's just the nature of the game. At Mortgage HQ, we typically are holding at a bare minimum anywhere between maybe 10 to 15 new reviews with clients. In some weeks, some of the advisors here will hold, 20 plus new reviews. And that's, on top of speaking with the bank every day, speaking with current existing clients, as well as, helping deals flow through. So, yeah, that's generally what happens behind the scenes.
I'm just amazed how much changes there have been, because when I was working a lot closer with clients, we were only doing about 10 to 12 a week, and now we're double that.
Yeah, times are certainly busy. Very, very blessed.
How thoroughly do you go through a client's purchase?
I think it's certainly case by case, but in general, we'll do a reasonable amount of due diligence. We'll certainly look at the property, see what type it is, see what the client's goals are, and potentially give some guidance around if it is basically fit for the purpose that they're trying to achieve. But the thing is as just mentioned, we are working with quite a substantial amount of people at any given point in time, and so the reality is we can't spend a significant amount of time doing due diligence on every single property that comes onto our table. But we certainly do have a look, because it is part of our job to obviously make sure that they're not buying a lemon per se as well.
What are some key things you look for the client? What are some key things you look on behalf of the client?
I think it depends on what they're trying to achieve. When it comes to, say, somebody buying their first home, there's only so much input we can necessarily give, because it may be related to location-specific sort of areas that they're trying to, maybe raise a family. It could be related to school zone. There's only so much we can help there. But if it's more for investing, then there's numerous things that we can potentially take a look at. Could be related to what we say here at Mortgage HQ, the 3 C's. That's capital growth opportunities, cash flow, or capital improvement. And we can assess it on a case-by-case position and, give our thoughts.
Does anything shock you when you look through your clients' financials?
If you asked me this question a while ago, I'd say yes, but these days, no. I feel like we've certainly seen it all, almost, basically. So not these days, not anymore. Everybody's finances are all over the place, so nothing shocks us anymore.
Yeah. You have alluded to that not many people will have their finances sorted or perfect.
Yep.
But have you seen something that has zero issues?
I would say that having clients with zero financial issues very, very few and far between. Most of the time, someone's going to have a significant strength and then perhaps a relative weakness to their position. And very, very few clients will have balance between the both from the get-go. Because in my opinion, finances are basically like people. Nobody's perfect. So we're always working on something.
Does having a good accountant give you an extra boost with your application when you apply at the bank?
I would say it depends on how you define a good accountant. I mean, having a good accountant in general is never a bad thing, whether it's, business dedicated accountant or a property specialist accountant. But the thing is in the eyes of the banks, if you, say, have financial statements because you own a business or, property, you can look to add back certain things. And things that they look for in general are net profit after tax, as well as depreciation, home office expenses, interest expenses. And so, with this in mind, if your accountant's really good and they help you write off a lot of things, sometimes your actual income will not look so strong in the eyes of the bank, and so therefore it will be harder when coming to applying for lending.
What about formatting? Does that matter?
Yes, ideally it comes in a great format, but yeah, it just makes the application a bit smoother.
Are there certain formats that are more widely accepted? Any programs?
If you use, for example, the mainstream stuff like MIOB or Xero or those types, generally speaking, it is a lot cleaner and easier to use. Or if your accountant can produce stuff, then that is certainly ideal.
And so when it comes to purchasing a home, how much do the bank look through the properties?
The banks will certainly do a fair bit of due diligence. I mean, the way that I like to explain it to clients is, if you're looking to personally lend money to, say, maybe some friends or a family member or anybody really, you would probably hope that you'd be repaid at some point in time. And that's how exactly a bank's going to assess you, but, on steroids. They want to ensure that, that the application itself is okay. But not only that, they want to make sure the security that they're lending money on is for a property that isn't going to fall over the next day. They're in it for the long game as well.
And are banks looking to actively lend money, or are they looking for ways to not give you the lending?
Oh, definitely in the business of lending money, but they want to make sure that they can actually it's a win-win solution for both the bank themselves as well as the clients as well.
Why do you think a lot of people feel like the bank always just looking to decline them?
I feel like that might be the case because sometimes people don't quite necessarily understand how the banking criteria works and how to be bankable. Like we just mentioned with people that run, their own businesses, maybe because they're taking home a lot of money because, on paper they're not earning much, they're not paying too much tax in a legal way, that is, of course. They feel like the bank should, actually recognise this, whereas on paper, because maybe their accountants are so good and they're not paying too much tax, it looks like they're actually not earning much, when in reality there's a little bit more cash flow to play with. And so I guess when you understand that, amongst some other criteria with the banks, it may feel this way at times as well, that it is hard to get money. But the banks, that they do want to lend money, it's just making sure you are bankable.
When it comes to credit card, we can't live without them. And when you look at credit card limits in an application, how does it affect it?
Yeah, so credit cards sometimes, case by case, can make or break an application. How the banks actually view credit cards or any personal lending actually is based on the limit as well as the term as well. And so that's the key. Because if, for example, you've got a credit card and let's just say there's a $15,000 limit, even if you're really diligent and you pay it off at the end of every single month before you start accruing interest, the bank's gonna go ahead and still assume that you can spend the full $15,000, for example, and then because of that, it will impact your serviceability. And a handy tip is for roughly every $10,000 of limit, that's about $40,000 worth of serviceability decreased.
If there was one piece of advice that you can give to buyers or someone who wants to approach a mortgage advisor, what would that be to soothe the nerves?
I would say don't overthink it. Just do it. Don't overthink it because, as mentioned, nobody's perfect when it comes to their finances. And if you don't at least start by engaging, having this conversation, then potentially you won't know where you stand. And the thing is I've been very fortunate to help out a lot of clients at Mortgage HQ, and sometimes our clients, they're in a very, very strong position, but they actually think otherwise for whatever reason. Not too sure, but sometimes it's just not understanding, because the reality is we don't get taught how to get a mortgage at school, and so I say just start by having a chat, because you don't know where it might lead.
Financial freedom. Financial freedom.
Wealth HQ, empowering you to take charge of your financial life.